Good morning, friends. Good morning, audience, local audience. Welcome to my ad hoc ranking station or center. And today I have the subject or the branch of the ad hoc ranking is my 2 cents. Yesterday's altercation is it's only the beginning, folks. Don't kid yourself. You may think this is over. You turn your back and walk and whatever. No, no. Uh, this is only the first punch. You're still in the ring. And those guys yesterday, the uh, the hen house uh, uh, in there is in shambles, right? They're picking at each other. They're fuming. They're trying to repair their emotions or trying to kind of control their emotions. Yesterday, thank Allah, right? Paid off for the debacles, intentional debacles of Obama bowing down to the Chinese rooster and George W. Bush sending that pathetic letter to the widow of the pilot who supposedly collided uh, uh, with the U.S. military spy plane that forced it to land in Hong Kong, and then the Chinese came in, moved about, and then extracted all kind of secrets from it. Uh, I am suspicious of that, but it's not our subjects nonetheless. So this is not over, folks. This is anything but over. This is only the first move because now the Chinese being humiliated, uh, they may be thinking irrationally, right? And they may resort to some rash, uncalculated, miscalculated move or something like that, which may force uh, a war, really. And a war, like I told you, if it's conventional, it would be fine. And I will never, I don't, I'm confident they will never resort to nuclear war. But then again, that's for you to decide. You're already in the ring. You're already in the fight. You already threw the first punch and then delivered a really good punch, but not a knockout, really. And it's not over. Now, this may be misconstrued by the Chinese. If you recall, Truman and somebody else went to meet with General MacArthur because he was like weaving and establishing policy around the Pacific and so on. And they needed to tell him he cannot do that, right? Because he's a war general and that the president and the Washington staff usually make policy, not him. Uh, so they met with him and they kind of gathered enough courage to make the statement and order him not to do policy. But then they ran off and they made such a statement, saying that they couldn't believe that they did what they did and they eventually ran off. He was a general, he was like he has a commanding presence, right? Or not all generals do, but he was. Nonetheless, uh, nonetheless, that could be misconstrued as like okay, it's a fender bender. Uh, Chinese took the first punch, but it's not over. So how do uh, how do you answer that? It's very simple, folks. Uh, I don't usually contribute such information, uh, but you need to. But that Chinese regime and what they've been doing, like to my people in Syria and in China, internment concentration camps and internment camps, and what you don't hear about is far worse actually. And even here, some companies like whatever company, right? They use that Chinese labor, which is not really Chinese, which is Uyghur, right? And they bring it here, like on their misery and their concentration camps of Chinese against the Muslims. The Muslims, do the production and the work, and these corporates here, the rabbis of the stock market, reap handsome profit, right? Bottom line, they call it bottom line. So that Chinese regime, uh, it's not something I like really, and I do forecast a bad future for them. Uh, and they're benefactors, and they're operate smooth operators, right? Rough operators. Nonetheless, you need to impress on the Chinese that this is not over. So my recommendation is really gigantic exercise in the Pacific. Like large force in the North Pacific, large force in the South Pacific. And you converge on Hawaii as a simulation of China, right? And then do a lot of flying and fighting and so on around. Usually you guys did like red flag exercise and so on, something similar, but this needs to be big. And then you can bring your friends from Europe, such as there is a belly dancer in 10 Downing Street, like he dances with belly, like remember that COVID party, covert COVID party? And he was dancing and his belly was shaking. So I call him a belly dancer of 10 Downing Street. So you can bring his forces, Germany too, I don't know, Swedes, whoever wants to join. I think you can bring all of them and show force, right, and unity. And then, because those Chinese have been talking nuclear out of nowhere, like they and what's his name, that who's Talibi, the guy with the boot in his mouth, now he realizes that killing civilians in Syria doesn't make him a hero, right, or a courageous weasel, right? Now he finds out that dropping bunker busters on civilians and gas and so on and so forth is not a victory, right? Now he got carried away and he came into Ukraine, but then now his airplanes are neutralized. And guess what? His weasels turned out to be like weasels disguised as cats, right? Okay, but that's not our subject here. The subject is very simple, folks. Those Chinese are still, they have like this big head, and now they're fuming and so on, and they may actually resort to something really bad. I don't think so, but their state of mind now after what happened yesterday is pretty problematic. And a person in such a high place, or creature in such a high place, or such a situation being defeated, you never know, And and to be honest with you, I've been observing them for a while. I know them what they are. They're not the smart type, right? They're impetuous. Their decisions and deductions and understanding of things is shallow at best, right? How did they become lucky? Well, they could say that is the pauper with personality problems who won the lottery, right? And he just now went and bought. Okay. But there is that Moses the Crow behind the scene, providing him with cash and patents and stealing everything from everywhere and giving it to that pauper in Shanghai, Shanghai Jews. Anyways, so they think they got that on their own. That's the problem. And now they're humiliated. So they may resort to something pretty bad. So keep on the lookout. I don't need to preach that on you, but now you need a very, very gigantic exercise. Those ballistic missiles, mock ballistic missiles, fire them at the Australian. Make sure you arrange with Australians to make sure that they're not live, right? Because those Chinese and others need to know as well that the United States can also fire missiles, right? Putin fired missiles like from Belarus, those ballistic missiles, and you guys are like just watching, like your complicity in Ukraine is pretty obvious. But now I think your military needs to understand that your complicity with China, with China will basically, they will come and slap you around every day, and after that, if you lose any stand with them, and you know what, Australia maybe is on their menu as well. So you need that gigantic exercise, folks. You need to convince the guys in there that this is going to be a fight to remember. If they ever commit anything, if they make a rash decision or miscalculations now. Now, your exercise, stay away from them, right? Don't go into the Taiwan Strait and so on with massive force, and you may provoke them, actually. But they need to see now. That's all they need to see. Anyways, so that's that. You're still in the ring. First punch, was successful, but and caused a lot of pain and misery. And the hen house is in shambles, like I said. They're picking at each other, they're cackling, they're roosting, wailing and whatnot. And they have a lot of support in the other worlds, right? Like in the Middle East, here and there, the polities, right? Those modern round glasses, Zionists, yesterday they were crushed, like some people sat there, presidents betting on a falsehood that China will emerge as the superpower yesterday. Yesterday it was that actually. One of which is like that Chechnya dog of Putin, right? Who said we will see who is going to be the first superpower, and well, he got convinced, right? Thank you a lot. Anyways, so that's where you are, folks, and I'm gonna make a couple of comments about. So Obama and his debacle of bowing down, and George Bush, W. Bush, and that pathetic letter of which I believe was set up, were paid for yesterday. They were offset, right? Now Obama is in the White House as a female called Harris or Mama. So don't underestimate uh, the power of those Israelis, the Obama and the Trump, and well, the Biden for that matter. So that's that, folks. Now I'm going to make a comment. I mentioned something about black magic being Jewish and alchemy being Arab. Yes, magic and black magic has always been associated with Judaism ever since Babylon, and even before that, as a matter of fact. Black magic gave us occults and whatever worship and underground practice. Alchemy, on the other hand, gave us chemistry, right? And that's what we call it in the Muslim world. When we go to school, the subject is alchemia or asemia, which is in the West called chemistry. So their alchemy really wasn't really something ephemeral or pseudoscience, or no, it was real science. As a matter of fact, I'm going to quote one called Jabir ibn Hayyan. He's an Arab alchemist. He lived like maybe 800 years ago. And he is real true Arab, like from Arabic tribes and so on and so forth. And he said, and I quote, that's what he said, you take the smallest element in nature and shatter it. And if you're able to do so, you will burn the city the size of Baghdad. And there is a man who's a Persian, right? Which I do believe he's part of, our Arabia heritage, right? As many Persians are. Here in the US, I have a lot of respect for the man. He's a philosopher, and I think he's a teacher, and he's an author, right? His name is Sayyid Hussein Nasr, right? And he has writings, I think, in the US. He said, and I quote, that their patterns of dotting and so on and so forth, meaning the Arabs, it tells you that they must have known the structure of the atom. They did, as a matter of fact. They were able, definitely they were able to define a lot of that. These books were basically translated and scrapped and so on. Anyways, that's like a side subject here. First punch was yesterday. You need to go around, folks. You need to understand that you're ready for a fight any day, any now. Had the US flinched yesterday, then you begin the countdown and rapid countdown for the demise of the United States. Yesterday was nothing less than two main guys duking it out. And whoever wins will basically be the boss of the other. That's it. So you can capitalize much on that if you love the United States, of course. You start bringing jobs and so on. I would say I would commence laws that says, like you have to, for companies, you have to manufacture at least 50% in the United States. And if you don't, go sell your stuff elsewhere. And so on and so forth. Like time, I think if I was in the government, I would force that point, and I would stop the theft of trillions, and I would retrieve the stolen trillions and their potential as well. Anyways, that is that, folks. You need to really impress on those Chinese that they may surmise, that like I said, this is a fender bender, and they try to downplay the effect of it, but they will want to continue. the game, right? Let me tell you about them, those Shanghai, Beijing guys. They're the uh, offspring of Genghis Khan. And this is the trait of the coward, right? And the sleazy and the filthy. When they're able to do damage to others, oh, they do it. They do it with impunity, and they become gory. But when they have a force that stands up for them and they realize they may lose, oh, they turn into chickens. So when I called them roosters, I wasn't making this up, man. I wasn't really mocking them. It's their fact. I'll give you an example. When they invaded the Muslim world like 1,000 years ago, uh, Genghis Khan and his Hulagu, his grandson, they entered Baghdad and they burned so many books. They destroyed enormous sum of knowledge and enormous millions of books, and they even made a bridge on the Tigris River to cross over, and so on and so forth. And there was no armies then, because the Muslim world was in a lethargic state, learning. They were utopia. They were almost living utopia. Almost. Well, almost. Not perfect, but trust me, some of the subjects these weasels destroyed are no longer around, and scholars, if they saw those subjects, they would kill for them, right? Those tomes or those books. They just destroyed them with impunity. Now the Arabs or the Muslims, in the Middle East, gathered an army and met them in the spring of Goliath, right? The Holakos. Now these guys killing so many people, millions in Baghdad and so on. Like whenever they entered a place who's unarmed and so on, oh, they started chopping down heads and so on. They're Jews. Now, they got carried away just like Pustalinin is. Remember, what's his name? Lavrov visiting Mongolia, his shared history. That's what he was talking about. So the Muslims gathered army, and the leader, the king, was Quds, K-U-T-Z. You may think it's German, right? And another one called Bibers, right? The general. And they met them in the spring of Goliath, even though the Muslims were way overwhelmed by numbers and I do recall, I don't think they were like outnumbered greatly. Those Muslims were outnumbered greatly. Not one Mongol made it out alive. They turned out to be, when it comes to push to shove, when push comes to shove and it's hand combat, oh, they turned out to be sleazy weasels. They take it out on civilians just like their brother Putin is, just like Lavrov is, right? But when reality comes around, they turned out to be nothing. So are the Chinese, their descendants, right? But now, be careful. These guys haven't given up. They received the first punch, and they may try to deem it as like an ephemeral thing, and they need to continue and so on. You need to do a show of force, people. You need to convince those guys that they cannot, should not dare, that they will not dare come at you anymore. Because if they do, it's going to be a brutal fight. And guess what? It's not going to be a conventional fight. They know they will lose it conventionally. That's why they were blurting and barking nuclear from the get-go, right? Why? Because they know they're conventionally, they can't do anything, right? So if push comes to shove, it may come to that. So my advice to you is that put the put a handle on them and convince them that this Pacific is going to turn into a lake of fire when it comes, if they dare do anything about it. How do you do that? I just told you. My 2 cents. Bye now.